Alright guys, welcome back to VALORANT News. The playoffs continue around the world, some major drama in all of the regions, but the Americas finally kicked off, and G2 versus 100 Thieves, a massively important game for 100 Thieves championship qualification hopes, went absolutely nowhere near the way that they expected, and were totally embarrassed up there on the main stage. What does that mean in terms of this team needing to blow it up in the very near future indeed? Big drama elsewhere. Very much on Twitter your thoughts in a comment. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you are new as always. We'll get to boost you in a second. We're going to start here with Elmer Putty, who worked with Gen.G, then was removed, then they won. Worked with Fnatic, then was removed, then they won. So, look, but his contract is up, and look, hopefully he can get another opportunity to show his worth to a team, if only that, you know, you bring him in for a little while, then you get rid of him, then you start to win. I don't know, and I wish you give the best. I know that Boaster was quote tweeting this and said that he wishes him the best. Yeah, good luck, bro. A lot was learned, and we achieved some great results this year. I believe teams would be wise to drop him a little message. So, yeah, hopefully that goes somewhere for him. We'll see. You know, maybe he's a really talented analyst. It's just unfortunately his reputation is not the best in terms of teams that he's been on and then been removed from. Now, this is some drama in challenges. These are the groups for challenges in the run to Ascension, and there was just a bit of talk about it. Durka was in the replies, Zeke was in the replies, lots of others were saying, are we sure these groups are fair? Mainly just looking at Group A, right? There's some other groups that are interesting here, but mainly Group A, because Group A has Enterprise Esports, and these guys have been on a rampage, right? We look at their recent matches. These guys have been one of the most deadly teams in Europe for sure, and it's also got BBL Pacific, another incredibly strong team, right, who've won all their recent games. And this is what I find interesting about Riot, the way they do these. It's like, oh, they just come out and say, oh yeah, here you go, here are the groups. And it's like, well, okay, how do we get to these groups? And also because there's not an even number of teams, they've got 2 groups of 3 and 2 groups of 4, which is also a bit strange. And as you can see, only one of these teams actually makes it to 5th to 8th, right? To make it through to the playoffs, where they will then play, and the winner here makes it to the grand finals, or the winner makes it to Ascension, right? Guaranteed. So, yeah, pretty wild. That's how they've just decided to do it, and people are like, well, hang on a second, does that seem really fair or reasonable to have 2 of the better teams in the same group? And, well, I don't know, we'll see, but only one of them can make it, assuming that one of them does, and then we'll see who wins the grand finals and makes it to Ascension, guaranteed to give themselves a chance for next year. Speaking of these big playoff games, this is a very interesting development right now over in the Pacific, and Riot has to really think about this. So, if you guys saw the other day, there are 3 teams left in the Pacific. We only have a lower final and a grand final left in that region, and they are playing it in Tokyo, which wasn't necessary, maybe, but they decided that they are going to do the Pacific finals in Tokyo. Now, this means a couple of things. PaperX are in the grand finals, guaranteed, but they're still waiting for Patman to get his Schengen Zone visa, which allows him to go to Paris for the World Championship. So, if he doesn't get that visa in the next couple of days, he will not go to Tokyo, and he will stay where he is to make sure that they can get that visa sorted in time for the World Championship. So PaperX may well go to Tokyo without their full strength team. What will they do instead? Bring back Mindfreak, bring back cigarettes? I don't know. But the same may well apply for RRQ. They are set to play Talon in the lower side. Now, RRQ have already qualified for the World Championship, by the way. So again, their massive priority is to make sure that they get their visas sorted. And presumably, they're in a similar situation. They need to get this Schengen visa accepted before the Tokyo finals. And as of now, it's not happening. So they may well take a very different team to Tokyo, because and it would be a real sham, right, from Riot's perspective, because they're literally going to Tokyo to play 2 matches for the Grand Finals of the Pacific, and all of the teams there, apart from Talon, might not even have their real team, right, because they've got to deal with this Champions thing. So Riot have to think about what this looks like going forwards. They must find a way for these teams, maybe before they've qualified for the big ones, to actually at least apply for the visas or something, or the simple solution would be just don't do this again, where you're running the final 2 matches of the playoffs in a totally different country, because this, like, the geopolitics stuff affecting Valorant teams has happened way too often at this point. So RRQ may not have their roster, like certainly not their full roster, in Tokyo in a few days' time, and Talon will be loving life. Now, for Talon, it's also interesting because are they applying for their Champions visa yet? I mean, Champions isn't far away, right? We're nearly in September already. But Talon haven't qualified for the World Championship yet. So they'll be going to Tokyo with their full team. And if they beat RRQ, then they qualify for the World Championship. So DRX, they should be concerned for good reason, right? Because if Talon beat RRQ, then DRX don't make it to the World Championship. It's PaperX, it's RRQ, it's T1, and it's Talon that would make it in that scenario. So, yeah, maybe RRQ putting another trick out from under their sleeve to, let's say, be the Korean Slayers yet again. But Talon should be in a great spot here, right? If they can play an understrength RRQ team in Tokyo and they can beat them, then they qualify for champions, but then they've got to sort out their visas, which right now, the reason why RRQ and PaperX might not be there with their full strength team is because they've got to go through this issue. So, look, we've got another week, so they may make it work, but they also may not. So, yeah, just to quickly look at, this is the grand final. That's the final coming up on the 30th of August. So, yeah, pretty much a week to get that all resolved. This is the Chinese region. We have a game currently underway. Dragon Ranger Gaming are currently playing Bilibili, but yesterday we had two big results. Edgewood Gaming took down Tyloo, Gili Gaming took down All Gamers, so that pretty much ends any of the discussion, and yeah, as it stands, it's early days on the game too. The Haven went to DRG 13-10, so wow, DRG making a serious move here, right? And as a result, these are your four teams that will be at Champions Paris. So Trace Esports started the year well, they're not here. Obviously Wolves, middle of the year was very strong, but it's Edwards who do get the chance, not been clean from them, but they do get the chance to try and defend their title. Bilibili are there as well, XLG and DRG. Now, of course, notably, as we've mentioned over the last couple of days, XLG and DRG are both Ascension teams. One of them will be going down to Ascension to at least fight for their spots next year, which is pretty crazy to think about, right? Because typically, if you make it to the World Championship, you guarantee you get to stay. But if both Challenger teams make it to the World Championship, then it depends who places higher. Now, look, these teams are both good enough that whoever loses to the other or whoever places lower, if they place the same, I don't exactly know how that they decide the tiebreaker, let's say. But one of them will drop down to Ascension and fight for their spot against the Ascension winners, and presumably they'll make it back up, you would think, because they're pretty good and they've just made it to the World Championship, but we shall see about that. Let's talk Europe, because this got dramatic as well. Alpha says playing BBL sounds great a couple of days ago, and there was a bit of a back and forth here, and this tweet where Alpha says, okay, good luck in lower, and well, if you look in the replies here, you'll find some pretty entertaining responses, because, well, a week or so later, Fnatic go down 2-1 to BBL. So look, Fnatic have made it to the World Championship. There's a lot for BBL, of course, to try and play for here. It's not the end of the world for Fnatic, but it's got to be said that this was pretty ugly, and the Ascent, look, it was BBL's pick here, right? But Fnatic's Ascent has not been strong for some time, and then they went to a decider Haven and they won it in the end 13-9 despite a good attacking side from Fnatic. So yeah, pretty remarkable. There was a few rounds here that Fnatic would probably want back. Is it the end of the world for them? Not necessarily, and I do rate BBL pretty highly as a team, but it's not like Fnatic have loads of momentum going into the World Championship. The other one is Na'Vi going down to Giant X. So Giant X, maybe they could still pull off the impossible here and make it through to the World Championship. They still can, of course. If you're in the playoffs, you've got a chance to get to the Grand Finals and make it happen. They won the Haven, they won the Ascent to close out the series. But let's talk about the Americas. You know, real quick, we'll just look at the brackets here in Europe as well, because those are only the first couple of games. Today, Heretics play BBL and Liquid play Giant X, and then tomorrow we start to get the losers bracket games. I know that Carmine Core fans are not very happy about this because they now had to play Fnatic in the first round of losers. So good luck with that, I suppose. And Na'Vi will play Vitality. So some huge games in Europe coming up over the next couple of days. But let's do the Americas, because a couple of years ago was the last time that Cloud9 won a game in the playoffs. Pretty insane, right? Like 819 days ago, they beat Lev to get it done. And yesterday, they did it again. So Lev played Cloud9, and this was a very entertaining series. Right? There was all sorts going on here. We had the choke symbols getting thrown around. We had Sato popping 4Ks, but as Leaf says, battle of the choke, because, well, Cloud9, choke 9, whatever you want to say. But then, in the end, it was a Cloud9 victory. So game one went Cloud9's way on the Corrode in the end. They brought it back for the dub. The Haven then was insane, because this was the 10-2 half into the massive offensive masterclass from Lev on the Haven. That's when the choke symbol started to fly around. Sato with a 30-15 demolition job on the Yoru. And then the Lotus was the other way around. Lev then had a huge advantage. They went to 11-5 and then lost 8 consecutive rounds. Okonos tried his best, but it it wasn't to be in C9 take the victory. So yeah, sensational series in many ways. How much does it matter? Well, it's very critical actually in terms of these championship standings, and Demon1 was loving it, it seems. After Liv, of course, dropped him, moved away, he was in the replies to Net saying, yeah, good work, and he was also in the replies to Oxy saying, yeah, damn, nice win. So Demon1, generational hate watch last night. But the other team that caused a lot of drama in the Americas was the State of 100 Thieves. They had, after dropping Boostio, a bit of a honeymoon phase, right? It seemed to be going kind of well with Kess. Xander was calling the shots okay, but it's not worked out. Now look, had they kept Boostio, would they have even made the playoffs? Would it have been much better? Maybe not, but they turned up against G2, and look, this is still a G2 with Baby Bay, and yes, Baby Bay's been a lot better, and he deserves an awful lot of credit, and we'll see where he even goes from here, right? Assuming Leaf comes back at some point. Where does Baby Bay go? Does he get an opportunity on another team? Does he say as a substitute somewhere? You know, these are some interesting options for him. But they played against a G2 team that you would expect 100 Thieves to at least have a fight against. Now, Josh RT makes it pretty clear here that we're playing for Leaf. They want Leaf to be back. Right now, it doesn't appear that he's still well enough to play. I was really expecting him to play in the playoffs. He's not. So presumably, if he's well enough, he will only play for the World Championship, but probably they'll take Baby Bay as well, just in case. Now, this is wild to me. I just saw this the other day. If you guys remember Philip Kovalev, he used to be the head chef at NRG. Then they ran out of money and didn't pay him anymore. So 100 Thieves, they brought him in as well. As he says, just a few days ago now, new client dropped. I mean, I'm already hungry. I'm looking at this and I'm absolutely ravenous. Japanese braised brisket bowls and all this stuff with it all. I mean, it looks absolutely gorgeous. Now, this is the food that 100 Thieves guys are eating, right? Like, they've got a chef on board for the playoffs to try and make a run. And yet they get absolutely demolished on the main stage, right? They turn up on the Sunset, they get 13 fours. Like, this series, honestly, the amount of rounds that 100 Thieves won, because they won a couple of, as you can see here, they won the force buys right in the second round. If not for those, it would have been even worse. Right? I mean, this was the game one, Baby Bay with a nice little 3K. And yeah, he's been playing real nice. It's very impressive to see what he's up to. Aspas was very happy about his performance as well. They got absolutely slammed, right? As I say, the Sunset was a 13-4. Baby Bay was 16-9 on the Chamber. And then the Haven was 13-5. So both maps were just embarrassing, really, from 100 Thieves. And you really got to wonder where from here. Because as Asuna says, O2 versus G2, playing EG and lows in a couple of days. Sorry about that. And FNS is like, look, don't be sorry, get better, right? Like, these guys have to lock in. So, look, their life is very much on the line at this point, down to the losers bracket. They've got to make a hell of a run through the lower side. Evil Geniuses will probably be smelling blood in the water. And then today, it's Sen Cloud9 and NRG G2. So, look, Sen and G2 have already qualified. They want to win, but there's not as much to play for. The opportunity, you know, the door will probably feel a little bit open for some of these other teams now to try and make their run through to the World Championship instead. But very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.